Hare Krishna devotees, please accept my humble obeisances. All glory to Srila Prabhupada. Welcome devotees to today's class. Today we'll be discussing from Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi Lila, chapter 7, verses 31 and 32. The chapter is entitled Lord Chaitanya and Five Features. We're very happy to have His Holiness Candramauli Swami with us. Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to you and Srila Prabhupada.
Haribol.
Haribol, Maharaj. And it's all yours, Maharaj.
I'll be there in a minute.
No problem, Maharaj.
Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrindam Taha Dehi Mahaprabhu Karena Chintana Jagat Dubai Te Ami Kalilun Yata Yatana Kehe Keha Keha Edaila Pratigya Haila Anga Ta sabda dupaite patiba kinchu ranga. Here is an important point. Lord Chaitanya wanted to invent a way to capture the Mayavadis and others who did not take interest in the Krishna conscious movement. This is the symptom of an acharya. An acharya who comes for the service of the Lord cannot be expected to conform to a stereotype, for he must find the ways and means by which Krishna consciousness may be spread. Sometimes jealous persons criticize the Krishna conscious movement because it engages equally both boys and girls in distributing love of God, not knowing that boys and girls in countries like Europe and America mix very freely. These fools and rascals criticize the boys and girls in Krishna consciousness for intermingling. But these rascals should consider that one cannot suddenly change the community's social customs. However, since both the boys and girls are being trained to become preachers, those girls are not ordinary girls, but are as good as their brothers who are preaching Krishna consciousness. Therefore, to engage both boys and girls in fully transcendental activity is a policy intended to spread the Krishna conscious movement. These jealous fools who criticize the intermingling of boys and girls will simply have to be satisfied with their own foolishness because they cannot think of how to spread Krishna consciousness by adopting ways and means that are favorable for this purpose. Their stereotype methods will never help spread Krishna consciousness. Therefore, what we are doing is perfectly by the grace of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, but it is he who proposed to invent a way to capture those who strayed from Krishna consciousness. Om Gyan Timirandasya Yanajana Salakaya Chaksun Militam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadammayam Dadati Swapadantikam Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gaurvani Pacharine Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Pastyatya De Satarine Vanchakalpa Tarubhischa Kripa Sindhu Pevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namaho Namaha Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrindam Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So, Srila Prabhupada was asked, why have you adjusted this particular standard principle of allowing equal opportunities both within the temples and outside for ladies to engage in Krishna consciousness, where we see the tradition in India is different. And Srila Prabhupada said, I have become successful in spreading Krishna consciousness because of this adjustment. And then the discussion turned into, well, who's qualified to make an adjustment? Not everybody, only those who are, here it says here, acharyas. Acharyas, one who is preaching Krishna consciousness as his main service to the Supreme Lord, and able to make others Krishna conscious also. And then Acharya means one who teaches by example, not only by precept. Precept is there, but example is also higher than precept. An example is there and precept is there, and that is an Acharya. And he doesn't conform. You see the history of our movement that even the Goswamis made some adjustments. Jiva Goswami made some adjustments in order to what we say deter people from pretentiously making statements about the difference between in other words, using the idea of parakya ras as being superior to swakya ras, which it was, which it is, from the spiritual point of view in terms of its spiritual connection and its spiritual potency. But then those who were using it were imitating it. In order to destroy that, Jiva Goswami started to preach the superiority of the swakya ras over parakya ras, using that as a technique to derail these pretentious, foolish people from imitating something that they're not qualified to do. And so the acharyas sometimes adjust things, but it's only for preaching, no other reason. And when Prabhupada was discussing it, what actually was with Shruta Kirti, he said, that is a principle, and there is details. One cannot change the principle, but one can change the detail which supports the principle. So then the next question was, how do we know what is a detail and what is a principle? And Prabhupada's answer was, that takes intelligence. So this movement moves by intelligence, not simply by rules and regulations, which are the foundations, but learning how to apply the rules and regulations in an intelligent way in all activities. Sometimes we had people ask us questions. Well, how can I do this? In other words, they want to overcome some situation in life where they can somehow get beyond some anartha, some obstacle. And sometimes you cannot simply give a formula for that. You have to say you have to use your intelligence. So intelligence, it drives this movement. So what does it mean to be intelligent? When someone asked Srila Prabhupada, or actually didn't ask, he said, Prabhupada, I don't have any intelligence. And Prabhupada said, then get some. So intelligence is available when one reads scripture and hears from the bona fide spiritual teachers who give us the highest form of spiritual intelligence in the form of this philosophy and spiritual practice also. So one has to use their intelligence in executing devotional service, not simply, well, just for instance, there are people who just like to imitate, not knowing that imitation is simply another form of cheapness, makes the whole process cheap. It becomes a joke. Because someone is doing something, I'll do the same thing. But are you qualified to do the same thing? Do you know the motivation behind how that person is doing it or the purpose behind it? For instance, so that intelligence not only comes from scripture and guru, It also comes from understanding how to apply the intelligence in every circumstance. And therefore, it requires that quality in order to execute devotional service because nothing is going to, and not everything is going to be handed to you. So Prabhupada said, yes, intelligence is available through understanding the words of the spiritual master and learning how to apply it, not just understanding it. Application has to be there. Otherwise, the understanding will not come to the point of making a successful execution of the activity. One has to learn applications. And what may work in one country may not work in another country. Just like you read the 64 rules and regulations of, for instance, just I'll give a different, just for the idea of vanaprast. So that is part of the transitional stage to the highest stage, which is sannyas. So what is vanaprast? Vana means forest, and prasta means dweller. So is it important that everyone goes to the forest and live in the forest for a number of years? It's not practical, nor is it even encouraged. Then therefore one has to understand what is vanaprast according to time, place, and circumstance and the words of the acharyas and apply it accordingly. And not simply think, well, vanaprastha means forest dweller, so I'm just going to go in the forest and chant and preach to the animals. So a lot of things are just surreptitiously. And imitation is very, very much common. There was one story where one doctor, he was a veterinarian, and he was teaching his disciple how to become a veterinarian. The disciple was watching his teacher work on the animals. And so one time a horse came and the horse had a big, big lump in his throat. So the teacher, the veterinarian, asked for a rubber hammer. He took the rubber mallet and started to smash the lump in the horse's throat. And after a while, the lump was gone and the horse was fine. So now his disciple is watching that. So now after some time, he's on his own and he's doing his own practice. A horse comes and same thing, it has a lump in its throat. So he remembered what his spiritual master did, or his teacher, his veterinarian teacher. So he takes a hammer and starts hitting that lump, and the horse is jumping and crying, and then when it came back to the teacher, he said, "I did what you did." He said, but the teacher said, "You fool! The horse that I had, it was a watermelon he had stuck in his throat, and I was breaking it up so he could swallow it. But the one you had wasn't the same. The lump wasn't the same. So here where imitation turns into some kind of, you know, wrong activity or even a dangerous activity, something that's detrimental. So one has to understand things by intelligence, and one has to gain intelligence from Guru and Krishna. And so here, Prabhupada uses the example how, using his intelligence, he understood the social environment of the Western countries, and therefore he knew to follow the Indian protocol method would not work in Europe and in America. And so he adjusted. And Prabhupada said, I was successful because of that. So there's an example of how Acharya works, and also an example of trying to understand what is the difference between a principle, which is not changeable, like just like the one time I remember uh, in New Vrindavan, the they changed the principle of 16 rounds. Now, 16 rounds is a principle. It's been given by, in other words, as minimum. 16 is minimum. One cannot go below that and consider themselves an initiated devotee. In other words, they're no longer following the principle of becoming qualified as a disciple. They have to chant, if they get initiated, they have to chant 16 rounds. So the idea was, this happened in New Vrindavan, we don't have to chant 16 rounds. We have to chant for 2 hours. That's all. So it became a time measurement instead of a numerical measurement. And that's nowhere in the Shastras. It was just done as some idea. And so then there are a lot of other things that got changed, which were principles. So principles cannot be changed, but details can be changed. Just like, for instance, what is a detail? So you have to go out preaching Krishna consciousness. So knowing the social environment, you may adopt some clothing that is suitable for the preaching according to the audience. And so, in other words, it mentions in the seventh canto that one can wear ordinary clothes in going out preaching, but the preaching has to go on, and the preaching doesn't change. But well, how one presents themselves to the audience may be an advantage for the audience to become more, what we say, acceptable to what the preaching is being offered. So these are examples of how details and principles have to be understood correctly and not just surreptitiously. And no one is qualified to do it unless there is an acharya. Acharya means one who teaches by example. So here it's mentioned that Lord Chaitanya wanted to capture the Mayavadis. And he did it. He didn't go in and start discussing philosophical teachings. He sat by the door in the most unclean place, and in a very humble way, he attracted their attention by his humility. And when they asked him about why he's singing and dancing with sentimental people, he said, my spiritual master said, I'm not qualified to study Vedanta, so all I can do is chant Hare Krishna. So that was his way in. And then after some time, he took the advantage to speak. And then he explained, in terms of Vedanta also, that in the Vedanta, it talks about the glorification of the Supreme Lord. And it also mentions the chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. So it was a tactic, and it worked. The Mayavadis, of course, you'll go on to read the rest of this chapter, and Lord Chaitanya uh, converted 60,000 Mayavadis headed by Prakasananda Saraswati, who was the head of the Mayavadis at that time. So yeah, when it comes to preaching, and we have to make an emphasis, adjustments can be made, but one should be in line with the Acharya and not just adopt ideas on how to do things. So, in other words, one should get the blessings and permission of the acharyas before they make an adjustment and see if that is in line with the principle. If it's not in line with the principle of Krishna consciousness, it cannot be accepted. So, these are some details. Many of us are practicing Krishna consciousness, and sometimes we're making adjustments, but we must understand details, yes, principles, no, and one has to know the difference between the two. And as Prabhupada said, that requires intelligence. Okay, so we can stop here and open it up for some discussion.
Thank you so much, Mark. This is one of the powerful classes that talks about preaching and intelligence and instructions and on a lot of stuff. I just stopped sharing and I'm gonna request devotees when possible if you could just raise your hand for any questions or you can put in the chat. Turn on your videos wherever possible so we can have each other's association. Um, Marge, if I can start with the first question, Marge. Um, when we were reading the purport, the first question that came to my mind is um, in the US, the preaching style is different from other countries. And I think that there was a word that was stated in the purport loosely. So my question, Marge, is where does the etiquette come into place, or is it important based on time, place, and circumstance when it comes to preaching?
You mean the behavior?
Yes, Maharaj.
Well, I don't, behavior is the characteristic of a devotee. So you have to give me an example of what you're trying to say.
Maharaj, like for example, in the purport, Shri Prabhupada was saying, the boys and the girls, they interact very loosely when it comes, in the US. At the same time, we are trying to preach to a Western world. At the same time, we're trying to make sure that they don't cross or break the principles. So, um, where is there's the fine line? Like, do we start it in the beginning or when they're a little bit more solidified in Krishna consciousness?
Well,
Because, like you said, Marge, US and India is so different, like,
yeah, yeah, even preaching in these different countries are done differently
yeah,
in terms of presenting the same philosophy,
yeah.
but somehow or other using other ideas to support the philosophy, which may be more, uh, what we say, knowledgeable to people in Western countries. In other words, examples. But Prabhupada,
It was very cool.
when he established the temples, he had women living on one floor and men living on the other floor.
Mhm.
So there wasn't any co-ed uh, bathrooms or co-ed ashram like they do like they do in colleges and universities in the West. And in performing activities in the temple, the men stood on one side, the women stood on the other side, like that. Not that sometimes some people uh, got into this idea that women have to stand in the back and the men have to stand in the front. This is some concoction by some, what we say, reactionary people in our movement. Prabhupada never endorsed it. If you see the old days, the women were in the front, the men were in the front. But there was a line in the middle, and that line was usually the spiritual master or the Vyasa-san or Srila Prabhupada be sitting on his Vyasa-san, and the men would be on one side, the women on the other side. So Prabhupada did that. And so he didn't allow intermingling in a very loose way. But we found that, of course, even on the altar, uh, he allowed women to also be on the altar. But then when he saw that men and women on the altar together wasn't really healthy, he allowed women to be there and then men to be there at different times. When because many romances start in the altar. That's a fact. That's where they begin, really. God is my witness. So
I
that
know what you mean, Maharaj. Heard that before.
well, the atmosphere on the altar is very sweet and sublime and very, and so that energy, you have to direct your energy towards the Lord, and if it gets diverted towards your fellow persons, then you might find out there's some program developing. Well, that was later adjusted, but not that it was restricted. It was adjusted. That's all. So Prabhupada did that. Mhm. And,
Thank you. Sorry, March.
and even in the services, though, he allowed men and women to work to do services together, but not in a what we say. We were always told not to take too much time and energy in that atmosphere and get familiar. So we were always told that just focus on the service and then move on. That's all. Like that. So devotees had to be very much aware that, getting familiar on a personal level when we do services may lead to something else. So there was some guidance, some instructions in terms of behavior that was explained to both men and women in the society, so the interaction wouldn't go beyond, uh, you know, what was necessary to carry on the services.
Thank you, March, for
But still, it wasn't perfect.
yes.
But we had examples like in the New York temple, they weren't allowing the women to chant in the temple room with the men. They had another area for the women to chant. When Prabhupada found out, he said, if the men are disturbed, they can go to the forest.
I remember that fast time. He said, go.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, but then the Prabhupada was also very keen at that the women and the men are also equally uh, qualified to execute devotional service. There should be a respect. But of course, this is Western culture, so nothing was perfect, but still, mm, things went on.
Thank you, Marge. Thank you for that. Prakshit is up next with his question.
Hare Krishna, Archbishop of humble obeisances, all glories to Sri Prabhupada. Thank you very much for this lecture. This question that I'm going to ask is a little delicate, at least in my own mind, it's delicate. It's about the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra. That's definitely a principle. Vaishnavas were chanting 64 rounds, and Sri Prabhupada has now, to his mercy, brought it down to 16 rounds minimum. So is the number of rounds now adjustable, or is it still a principle, or is it just because devotees are having problems, the Srila Prabhupada, by his mercy, brought down the number from 64 to 16? That's what I'm
Well,
asking.
yeah, so in other words, he adjusted what was going on. See, people have to understand the history before they can just make some statement, and that is Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati had devotees in his ashram chanting 64 rounds. But those who went out preaching, they could chant 16 rounds. But those who didn't preach, stayed back in the ashram and did ashram service, they had to chant 64 rounds. So that's the history. So Prabhupada, in making that adjustment, was also considering all of the activities that devotees had, and he accepted the fact that they didn't have time along with trying to spread Krishna consciousness. So he also allowed for that adjustment when it was suggested to him. And some people even today say that we should chant 64 rounds. That's what Prabhupada wanted, but that is not really correct. Prabhupada reestablished the standard. So we follow the 16 rounds as a minimal. but not below 16. One cannot go any farther down and think it's okay. For those who are just joining, they may gradually work up to 16 rounds, but once they get initiated, they have to continue to keep that vow of 16 rounds for regulative principles. If they don't, they become fallen, and they also actually lose their status as being initiated, because initiation is a vow. If you break your vow, you break your initiation, really. So in one sense, you're not initiated if you go below the standard. You might say, I got initiation. No, it doesn't have any value because you no longer uphold the agreement of the initiation. 16 rounds, 4 regulative principles. It has to be continuous and not just, well, I got initiated, therefore I can make all the adjustments I want and I'm still initiated. No, you're not initiated. You may think you are.
Thank you very much.
Anand, you had your hand up. You can go ahead with your question.
No, it's okay. Maybe someone else.
Okay. Dear Krishna, go ahead, Prabhu. Go ahead, Dear Krishna.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to you. Maharaj, on this principle, so one principle is also that one should have a spiritual master. But sometimes devotees, they just are not ready to accept a spiritual master with the thought that Srila Prabhupada is their spiritual master. Although we know Srila Prabhupada is our eminent Siksha Acharya. So how to advise such devotees?
They're not advisable. We've tried that for years. They don't understand Prabhupada's movement. That the disciplic succession does not stop. Prabhupada said, he told us all also, come up to the standard and you could also become a spiritual master and accept disciples. There's one letter he said that to, what was his name? Tushta Krishna. Tushta Krishna. You can read the letter 1974. He said that. And he said it also in different times in his discussions with devotees. So what we're talking about is what the Ritviks are saying. What does Krishna say in the Bhagavad Gita? Tad vidi pratipatena pariprasyena sevaya upadekshyanti te jnanam jnaninas tattva darshanaha. Approach a bona fide spiritual master, inquire from him submissively. Yeah. The self-realized soul can depart knowledge of you because he has seen the truth. So you have to accept a living spiritual master. That has to be there. Now, this is a very Guru Tattva is quite intricate and it requires some discussion to understand things in detail because there are certain situations that may arise. For instance, well, I wanted to take initiation from this spiritual master, but somehow or other, and he has accepted me, but I never got initiated, and therefore he left the planet. What do I do? Well, you can accept initiation from his god brother, who is also equally qualified, but your spiritual master or your Diksha Guru is actually the one that left the planet. And that person should know that. So he's connecting you to the disciplic succession. That's all. And that's the requirement for initiation. So yeah, there's those situations like that. But one has to take a living spiritual master. That's a fact. Adal Shraddha Sadhu Sangha Bhajana Kriya, and Rupa Goswami explains the process. And Bhajana Kriya means accepting a spiritual master. Out of the 64 regulative principles, the first one is to adho guvastikam. In other words, to accept the shelter of a bona fide spiritual master and work under his guidance. One cannot say, well, Rupa Goswami is my spiritual master. I just read his books. Rupa Goswami is not there to correct you every time you make mistakes. So Guru gives both philosophical knowledge and practical spiritual guidance also. But we don't like the spiritual guidance. We think, well, I'm reading the books, I go to the lectures, that's all I need. But if you understand, if you read the Nectar of Devotion, it says that one should occasionally acquire from the spiritual master, how can I make it more advancement? But devotees don't do that. They don't inquire. They think they're all right, but they're not.
Hope that helped, Hare Krishna. Very powerful question, though.
Thank you so much, Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Okay.
Very nice question. Any questions from devotees? This is a very powerful topic about preaching, because it's how merciful Srila Prabhupada was, it still is, in how we can preach and still maintain the principles and the detail. Maharaj, you touched a bit about this point, Maharaj, about principle and detail. And then you talked about one devotee asking Srila Prabhupada, but I don't know, what is the principle? And he said, use your intelligence. And then if you don't have one, go read. So, Maharaj, is there a situation, I'm just wondering, that even though someone reads and reads and reads and they still don't get it, is it because they're just way too dull?
No, that reading is not enough. And the point is, he was saying, how do you understand the difference between a principle and a detail? What is a principle and what is a detail? That Prabhupada said takes intelligence. And if you're thinking of how to apply Krishna consciousness in different situations, that requires some advice from those who can give advice. In other words, those who are on the same level as your spiritual master. For instance, if your spiritual master is not personally present. And we see there are many devotees who their spiritual master is not personally present. And they want to take one of Prabhupada's god brothers, I'm not Prabhupada's god, but one of their guru's god brother as their shiksha guru and guidance, now that they no longer have access personally. Of course, the instructions are eternal, but even for the practical guidance. That happened to me yesterday. Somebody asked me for that position because their spiritual master was gone. Just yesterday. And I said, yes, fine, I'll do whatever I can to represent your spiritual master and your efforts to become Krishna conscious.
Marge, there's a question in the chat from Daria, but I want to ask a piggyback question, Marge. I've heard this before, Marge, and sometimes I think we devotees sometimes don't take it seriously, is how important is it, Marge, for someone to have a Shiksha Guru if and when, one, the Guru is not physically present on the planet, and two, if they don't have quote unquote easy access to the Guru? Like how is because like, does it mean after 10 years they don't need a shiksha, or it's just for a lifetime they need a shiksha guru?
It's advisable. It's advisable, but it's not advisable to take reinitiation.
Yes, yes,
That's
yes.
against the
True.
principles.
Yes.
Yeah, it's advisable because even those who are in the position of giving initiations, who are spiritual masters, they also work with their peers to get ideas and advice on how to carry out their own service. We have the ISKCON Leadership Sangha, which happens every other year during the Gaur Purnima festival, where the leaders get together and discuss how to increase the preaching and how to work more together in a unified way to spread Krishna consciousness by developing new programs, by understanding deeper what we're doing and how to improve. We should never think we're all right, no matter what position we're in. That's that's not foolish, that's just idiotic, actually. We all need some help, some guidance, some suggestions, and just someone we can bounce things off. Someone we can bounce things off.
Thank you so much, Maharaj. I'll take Daria's question in the chat and I'll come to you, Sri Devi. Maharaj, Daria is asking, does the Vaishnav etiquette adjust to the Western culture? Prabhupada mentioned in the purport that boys and girls in Europe and America mix very freely. I was thinking on the principle on that the girls should only talk to the boys if it's service related. Should we avoid all types of conversations outside service related?
Yeah. What are you going to talk about? Woman is like fire, man is like butter. That's from the Shastras. When you mix butter and fire together, there's some melting. So that mixture should be only limited to what is necessary to carry on devotional service. Of course, if you're married, that's a different situation, but we're talking about not those who are not married.
Hope that helped, Daria. Sridevi, you're up next.
And also, what really is one of the biggest problem in ISKCON is that you give instructions to their disciples and they won't follow it. They give you excuses why they can't follow it. We don't, it's not that you give an instruction that makes it impossible for them to follow, but the spiritual master has to see that the person is not making any advancement. They're slow. So he gives it a little, suggestion on how they can improve their Krishna consciousness by doing something, by stopping something. But they think, oh no, it's okay. I'm all right.
Maharaj, I think that's where the danda comes into effect, Maharaj.
The what?
The danda, the guru's danda.
Well, now again, it's against the law to use the danda in it because that's called, what is it called? Disciple abuse. But in India, the spiritual master used to take a stick and beat his disciple. Of course, we don't do that with grihastas. Only with we don't do that with ladies, and we don't do it with grihastas. But with brahmacharis, it was done.
Hare Krishna, Maharaj. Sri Devi, you're up next. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Don't worry, grihastas don't get the stick.
Thank you, Anasuya. Dear Guru Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. I'm just very enlivened by this discussion. And I have some questions regarding the karmic load that devotees come with and the effects on the spiritual master. Nowadays, there is so much, negativity, there's trauma, there's psychosis, there's criminality, this, that, so many things now people are coming in with. So, how does this, impact the spiritual master who has to, just take care of these people and guide them and help them and purify them and so on? Is it the duty of the existing disciples to somehow try to raise these people before they come and approach the spiritual master, or it is not the job of disciples to do any such thing?
That's not the problem. The problem is once they commit to Krishna consciousness, start following the process, not to go back to their old ways again. That's the problem. All right, now you come. You had so many bad habits, so many sinful, and that's all finished. Take shelter, and by Krishna's mercy, you can get relief from the reactions of that through the process of initiation, at least to a certain degree. But don't do it again. Don't go back to the way you were before. That's the worst part. That's the part. You've been given the mercy, you've been given the ability to now change your life. And once you do, because people get really, really enthusiastic on initiation, and then all of a sudden, when time comes on, the enthusiasm is lost. And therefore, that's why we're in ISKCON, they're always trying to make more and more uh, principles that qualify ones for initiation. This idea of what is called guru, what is it called? Disciple test or something. What is it called?
IDC, ISKCON Disciple Course?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, it wasn't there with Prabhupada, but we had to do that. Also now there's that. And then for second initiation, you have to have Bhakti Shastra. I'm initiating a program right now that those who have a second initiation and don't have Bhakti Shastra, we're going to give them a time period to actually get accredited in Bhakti Shastra. Otherwise, they will lose their status as second initiation because they haven't come up to the standard. We made some, what we say, compromise. All right, we'll give you a second initiation, but go ahead and get the accreditation. In other words, that came after. But some people just didn't do it. So now the program is, if you don't do it, then you're again first initiated because you're not following the principles. You can't just adjust things and say everything is the way it used to be. It's not. Everything is done according to a level of spiritual practice, and there are different requirements that one must fulfill. These requirements are not difficult at all. They're easy. They're actually easy. It's also the duty of the spiritual master to test a disciple. They have to give them a test to see if they're qualified to become a disciple. Give them some service, some difficulty. Like sometimes we say, all right, spend 1 year in the ashram as a brahmachari or a brahmacharini. And after you do that, then all right, then you pass that test, and that gives you the advantage now of taking initiation. So it's the duty of the spiritual master to test. This is from Hari Bhakti Vilas. It's not some idea that the spiritual master is coming up just to make it difficult. These are all requirements. If you want to go back home, back to Godhead, it's not that you're just gonna do whatever you want and think you can make it. It's not possible. We've been in this material world for how many lives? Rotating in different species of life, Karana Guna Sangoso Sarasa Joni Janmasu. And now we have a chance to actually achieve the perfection of human life, which to stop the cycle of birth and death. It's not natural to take birth. It's not natural to die. It's not natural to get disease in old age. These things are also forced upon us because we have a material body. The soul is by nature pure. The soul is by nature full of transcendental happiness that can only be experienced when we actually come to the point of perfection. And all of these rules, regulations, and requirements are meant to bring you to that stage. They're not there just to harass you.
Maharaj, I've even noticed that even with the IDC course, even those that just take the IDC course, 1 year of chanting or 2 years of chanting in classes, after initiation, they still go down. That maintenance goes down. Like they need more than just the IDC course, a lot of grooming. I've come across that challenge quite a bit, Maharaj, and with
If
some
they
devote.
if they do one thing, they're pretty much guaranteed to stay fixed in Krishna consciousness. Regularly take association of devotees in the practice of Krishna consciousness. Don't skip the morning program. If you can't go to the temple, have a morning program in your home. But you need that morning program. Mangal Arti. Worship the spiritual master. Chant your rounds. Read Srimad Bhagavatam. Hear Srimad Bhagavatam. We're providing Bhagavatam now by this Zoom call. You don't have to sit there and read Bhagavatam. If you come to this Zoom call every day, you'll get Srimad Bhagavatam. Anasta Prayeshu Abrajeshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. It's a requirement. So we made it easy by having this Zoom call. And all you have to do is plug into this call. Stay attentive, and then that's your requirement for reading Srimad Bhagavatam. Of course, Srila Prabhupada said we should take time and try to understand deeper and read more. But the minimum is coming to Bhagavatam class and hearing Bhagavatam at least once a day. If you can't do it, then you should do it at home with what we say, local environment. It has to be done. These things are not optional.
Prabhupada called it the sandwich program, right, Maharaj?
Yeah, and
The morning.
the other half of the bread is not to come home from work and fall down and eat something and go to sleep.
Oh, Krishna, that's right, that's the other half of the sandwich.
Yeah, is to come back and get after being out, say you're working for doing some kind of occupation, you're being affected by the material energy out there. Come back, get renourished in spiritual activities. That's why Prabhupada said, and this is an interesting one, he said, in every one of our temples, there should be 3 hours of kirtan every night. That's it. That's written in Chaitanya Charitamrita. That's not just a statement. When Prabhupada puts something in his books, that's the absolute principle. And so he
But
said
Guru Maharaj,
3 hours of kirtan every night in our temples. If you can't come to the temple for whatever reason, at least do an hour of kirtan in your home with your friends, your family members, and others. If you can't find that, then just pick up some cartels and do some bhajans, sing something. Get renourished after being exposed to the external energy throughout the day. Then when you go to sleep at night, Prabhupada said you'll dream about Krishna or Krishna consciousness. In the evening hours and the morning hours are very fundamental in our practice of Krishna consciousness. In terms of the sadhana, sadhana is mostly morning and evening, especially the morning, of course. I know one preacher, he travels, but he always has Mangal Arti, he does Tulsi Puja, chants his rounds, hears class like that, reads the books. And he's always traveling, but he still does all of these things because he knows if you want to be spiritual nourished, you want to be transcendently satisfied, stay connected to the transcendental sound vibration. The material sound vibration is very strong. It overshadows even our Krishna consciousness. Therefore, we have to regenerate. Everything is based on the process of hearing. So yeah, the sandwich, which you mentioned, it's not that you make a pizza and you just put something on top of a piece of bread. You have to make a sandwich. Take two pieces of pizza and put them together. I don't know. Maybe that's not practical. But anyway, what I'm saying is that when you talk about sandwiches, there's top and the bottom, not just the bottom and the middle. So that
So
was
much we need to
given
hear.
by Prabhupada also. He made that statement. The sandwich.
Shridev, you had something to say? Go
Yeah, I was
ahead.
thinking that this is so important for us to hear, understand, and apply, because unless we have this knowledge, we'll think, oh, it's optional, it's okay. I chanted my rounds in the morning. Now I have things to do. Why I should again, in the evening I've spent so many hours in the morning, now again in the evening. Yes. The whole point of spiritual life is to understand the only way we can get out of the clutches of material energy is to get more and more absorbed in spiritual. I'm preaching to myself here. So all these things are not optional. They're mandatory for one who's serious about going back to Godhead. And thank you, Guru Maharaj, for reminding us again and again about these things. My obeisances to you.
If you have morning and evening classes, or at least read Bhagavatam in the morning, or maybe another scripture at night, you'll be qualified to preach Krishna consciousness after some time. Preacher simply means one thing, as Prabhupada said, preacher means reader. Those who read regularly will actually qualify themselves to be able to present that same knowledge to others. All you have to do is read, read, read. We have so many books too. But sometimes I get questions from devotees, and I can tell by the questions they don't read. Because the questions are so easily understandable simply by reading Prabhupada's books. Or hearing from Prabhupada's lectures, or hearing from your spiritual master. It's all there.
Thank you, Marge. Hope that helps, Sridevi. Perfect. Prachi, you're up next. And then
Thank
we'll
you.
conclude.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. All glories to you, Maharaj. Thank you, Maharaj, for this wonderful class. I have a question regarding material life, our material life. So, to what extent should a sincere devotee seek guidance on material life decisions versus developing their own discrimination and self reliance? So essentially, Maharaj, I was thinking there are two lives. We have this material life and spiritual life, and we seek spiritual guidance from our guru uh, to 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 sort of advance in our spiritual life, but at times there are so many challenges in our material life. Should we be disturbing our Guru Maharaj with these mundane questions?
I think a nun can answer that question. But I just came across a series of lectures by Srila Prabhupada. I was just listening to one yesterday. I noted it down. He's saying that whatever you need in your material life, if you just engage in Krishna consciousness, Krishna will give you both the intelligence or even provide the facilities to understand how to practice material life. The basic principles we know because we grow up in a certain way. But when we come to more important decisions and how to do, just like, you know, you know, getting married or what else, how to balance our occupational activities with our spiritual practice. If you just put your emphasis on Krishna consciousness, Krishna will do the rest. He does it automatically. He wants to help his devotee, and he sees the devotee is seriously trying to serve him. So he's going to also not only give you the intelligence, he's going to make the arrangements for you. He does that.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say very, very little, if any, time, effort to work out your material things.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a place to eat, if you have food to eat and you have a place to sleep, some place where you can live, and then a little occupation if you need something in order to facilitate that. What else do you need? The rest of the things can be understood in terms of our practice in Krishna consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
Comes automatically.
Mm-hmm. Guru Maharaj, that also means that our mind then becomes free because we are not thinking of material aspects at all. Then we can focus more on Krishna consciousness. That's your wonderful answer, Guru Maharaj.
I'll give
Yes.
you Prahlad Maharaj's statement. He says, material solutions to material problems are more problematic than the problems. You can't solve material problems. It's not possible. You try to solve it and you create another one. If you want to solve a material problem, go to the spiritual energy, and by the mercy of Krishna and the intelligence you gain, and everything becomes easy on the material level, becomes natural, becomes so doable, it's like an awakening.
Mm-hmm.
Because material energy is mutable. It's always changing, 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 changing. But Krishna consciousness doesn't change, it just expands. So I have a series of lectures. We call it spiritual solutions to material problems. And we've given that lecture many times to outside groups, especially.
Mm-hmm.
But we put our material problems foremost, and we put Krishna consciousness in the background, and we think, all right, if I can solve my material problems, then I'll be Krishna conscious. Oh, that's funny. Krishna's laughing at that one. So, I mean, I just wrote, and there was a lecture I just heard from Prabhupada. It was 11th Canto, 3rd chapter, verse number 21, December 10th, 1971. And Prabhupada talks about this. He said, Krishna really, when he sees the devotee is serving him nicely, he does everything for the devotee. He makes his material life easy and understandable. Unless you're a special person where he's taking everything away from you just to make you a pure devotee, that's a little different. But that's not what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, don't worry. Just focus on Krishna consciousness, and you get all the answers to all of your problems will automatically be solved.
Mm-hmm.
Krishna consciousness is the complete knowledge. Material knowledge is ephemeral, changing, and not even knowledge.
Mhm.
Jai Gurudev, your lotus feet are everything, Guru Maharaj. If we just cling to your lotus feet, we'll cross the ocean of nations.
And basically, day-to-day activities, we know how to do that.
Mhm.
We know how to, you know, we know how to do things to keep our body and mind together. We just do that.
Mhm.
Nobody has to teach you that.
Mhm. So, Guru Maharaj, basically, there are no problems. When we are in Krishna consciousness, there are no problems.
Well, there are challenges, but not problems. Challenges means there's an opportunity to make a spiritual advancement, which comes in the form of an obstacle, apparent obstacle. And Krishna does that just to push you forward. That's it. But if you depend on Krishna and, work in that way, then you'll see that the solution is just as easy available through the process of depending on Krishna. Sometimes we have this Raj Mukund Prabhu. He does this program called Think Gita. So he takes a Bhagavad Gita and he goes to these different festivals, and he meets people there, and he says, he talks to them a little bit about Gita, and he says, here, ask a question. Don't tell me the question. Ask the question, and then here, take the Bhagavad Gita and just randomly open it to any page. And they do that, and some of them are so shocked. Boy, that's the answer to my question. It happens all the time.
Maharaj, Mahatma Gandhi also wrote this once that, whenever I have a problem, I just open Bhagavad Gita and whatever verse comes in front of me just gives the answer.
Yeah, that's the magic of spiritual knowledge. It's always there to. That's a mercy. That's mercy. Because you're sincere, you want the answer. Krishna says, "All right, here, this is where you'll find it."
Mhm.
Like sometimes we come onto these classes that we're having here every day. We have some questions, but we never ask the questions. But if you listen to the class, your questions are answered.
Mhm. Mhm.
Because Krishna knows who's out there, and he encourages the speaker to say something that will answer somebody's question.
Mhm.
Right, Gauri Priya?
Always, always.
Yeah.
Maharaj, as a follow-up question, you said there will be challenges and there are challenges. So these challenges are almost always in our material life. Is it fair to understand that? And is it fair to then understand that spiritual and material life always go hand in hand?
Yeah, if you start to separate these things into two separate categories, you're going to find yourself confused. Spiritual principles applied to material situations transform that situation into something spiritual.
Very good.
I mean, everything's there in the Bhagavatam. Bhagavatam is complete. All knowledge is there. But we have to take time to read the Bhagavatam.
Thank you, Marge.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj.
Prachi. Hope that helped. Marge, there's a question in the chat, and then with that we can end. And that is Marge. Raj is asking he said that there are some regions in India with a common time zone where they're observing Nirjala Ekadasi, some today, some tomorrow. Is there a principle behind it? He's just wondering.
What's the question?
Some temples in India with the common time zone is observing Nirjala Ekadasi today, and some are observing tomorrow. Like temples in South and Central India observing Ekadasi today, while temples in North and East are observing it tomorrow. Just wondering, is there any principle behind it?
Yes. Don't get me started on that one.
So we'll just close the topic, Maharaj.
The whole thing is, when Prabhupada was here, everything was aligned with Mayapur. That was the Ekadasi, no matter where you were in the world. Now we've got so intricate and involved in that if you're traveling from one day to another, you could miss Ekadasi. And if you're traveling from one day to another, you can do two Ekadasis.
And we get more mercy.
Anyway, just follow it. And I mean, it's it's just the way it is.
It is what it is, right, Maharaj?
We got all of these, when we say pundits, trying to figure out how everything moves.
So true. So true.
Anyway,
Damodar, I have to end the class, but is your question very quick?
you got to answer Damodar's question because he's your number one disciple.
Maharaj, Maharaj. Go ahead, Damodar.
He's very
Hare Krishna.
he's very dedicated.
Oh, that he is, 100%. I agree. That he is, no doubt, Maharaj.
No problem, Maharaj. I can ask later.
Damodar, ask now. I open the mic, so don't waste my time. Sorry, Maharaj.
Follow the
Please
guru.
accept. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Prabhupada. Maharaj, you made a point regarding reading Bhagavatam. I was just wondering if you could elaborate about what should be the mood of reading Bhagavatam and, that particular aspect of it.
Well, there's a regimen that you should follow. You should read with the desire to understand. If you see certain points that are outstanding, you can note them down on a separate piece of paper. And then you can reflect on what you read after you're done. You can read back to your notes after you're done to see what stood out in your reading. And that helps you to go deeper and get a more complete understanding of the knowledge. Read in a prayerful mood. That's also recommended. You're praying to understand as you're reading. Read and write things down. If you don't understand things, write that part down, and then when you find the opportunity, ask the question.
That helped Damodar? Oh, sorry, Marge.
The whole process of Krishna consciousness is education. We're giving people real education, not this material education. Material education just relegates people to become good workers. That's all. I'll play that. If you want to get a shocking video, I can show you how education in America specifically is geared just to make people stupid, and so they can just get some information, get a degree, and get a job. They have no knowledge. They come out and they don't have any intelligence. Education is not about being a thinker, being a critical thinker, being someone who is, I don't know, there's many qualities that education had before the turn of the century. Now, after the turn of the century, not this century, the turn of the 20th century, back to the 1900s, It was a whole plot just to make people workers. That's all. Workers. That's all. You get if you got the degree, you were educated. No. All you had to do was regurgitate everything that you heard in class back onto the paper, and that's called education. Nowadays, with AI, it's even a bigger farce. Kids don't even take the test anymore. They find out what's going to be on the test. They check with AI and get the answers, and they just put that. So teachers are trying to figure out how to ways. I was talking to one teacher. He says now he gives everything on the spot. No more doing stuff at home. You get it. You have to do it all classroom work. Everything is class. He just to stop this idea of just cheating, just like going to AI for all of the answers you want. It's big. Education now is a joke. It's really a joke.
It is, Maharaj, for sure.
If you want, I'll show you that video. It's 15 minutes long. It's really long.
Can you send it to me, Maharaj, via email, if you don't mind? Would
Yeah,
love to. Thank you, Maharaj.
I sent it to one person, yeah.
Okay, and
Those who are interested in education should see this video. Then you can understand why people come
I'll
out.
send it to you, Sridevi, when I get it from Maharaj.
Really interesting. And it's well documented. And well documented.
Thank you, Maharaj. Anand, because you raised your hand 4 times and you put it together, I'm giving you one last chance, and then I have to end the class, please. 1 minute, please.
Yeah, thank you. It's just going to take 1 minute. Guru Maharaj, this Dhanal Pranam, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Guru Maharaj, my question is related to sannyas. A couple of classes I've heard in, and from a couple of devotees, that if you hold a sannyas danda, then it is inevitable that you become a sannyasi. I'm not sure if it's a joke or if they encourage or something. Can you say something on this?
Sometimes I do that. I take the dunda and I give it to somebody, and they look at me like, "Oh no." So it's not going to work like that. It's not that cheap where you just hand somebody a dunda and they become a sannyasi. Sometimes we do that just to indicate that that person has the way they are practicing Krishna consciousness. Then they should follow to the point where they actually accept sannyas. But it's not about just handing somebody a dunda. That's not some hocus pocus. That's ridiculous.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj.
Thank you. Maharaj, with your permission, if I may end the class, Maharaj.
You have my 250.
Thank you, Maharaj. And we want to thank all the devotees for joining. Such a nice questions, lively engagement, lively questions. I hope everybody benefited from this. And Maharaj, thank you so much for giving your time. Looking forward to seeing you next weekend. And those in America, looking forward to meeting all of you next weekend in Farmington Hills for the retreat. It's a very powerful retreat, so I definitely encourage devotees whenever possible. Please do attend. It's Guru disciple relationship.
Yeah, announce the subject matter.
Yes, Guru disciple relationship, extremely important. The foundation of our Krishna consciousness that will help us build the house with the Guru so that we can make it back to Godhead only by the Guru's mercy. Only by the Guru's mercy, nothing else. So,
Anasuya is going to give 3 classes.
mercy over you, Maharaj.
Baba and myself will be giving other classes. So you'll be bombarded with philosophy about guru-disciple relationship.
Beautiful topic, Maharaj. Beautiful topic.
It's the most important one. I didn't choose the topic, the devotees did, so.
I'm so happy they did. It's a beautiful topic.
And anyone
Most.
can come, even if you're in another country, get a ticket, fly into Detroit, and come for the weekend. It's going to be it's the evening of the second, third, fourth, fifth full days, half a day on the 6th, 3 full days, 2 half days, and a lot of fun too. We got some good kirtaniyas coming. So, you know who's coming, Anasuya?
No, Marge.
Chandra.
Say again, Marge?
Chandra.
Chandra.
Your goddaughter.
Oh, Chandra. From Boise, Idaho.
Well, now he lives in Wheeling, West Virginia. But yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that he moved up there. Oh, nice. Haven't seen him for ages.
Yeah, he's good at kirtan.
Yes, he is. We get to connect. It's been a long time that I haven't connected with him, Marge. That's so nice.
Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful. And it's open to
Mataji, I have a request.
Yes.
Mataji, I have a request from a cursed passport. If we can get the classes of Maharaj posted on the worldwide group, if that's possible, every day.
Yes, I will
on
definitely
Guru
share
side.
that with the
The
yes.
audio, just the audio, yeah.
Sure, I will definitely share this
It'll be
request
easier.
with the organizers. Yes, yes.
Sure. Thank you, Mataji.
Absolutely. Thank you, Anand. Thank you so much to all the devotees for joining us. And Marge, thank you so much for your time. Vanchakaptibhyascha, kripasindabevacha. Patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Yeah.
His Holiness Candramauli Swami ki
Jai.
jai. Hari Hari Bol.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you, Maharaj. Prabhupada.
Thank you very much.